Welcome to the launch of ASPI's International Cyber Policy Centre. It's an absolute joy to have all of you here and an honour for you to all take the time out of your diaries this evening and join us. Let me introduce myself. I'm Toby Feakin. I'm Senior Analyst for National Security and also now the Director of the International Cyber Policy Centre. And it's good to see so many familiar faces who I've spoken to along the way over the last 10 months in terms of forming the ideas for this centre and also shaping those ideas in the appropriate way. But also so many new faces too of those who are taking a genuine interest in this area, which I think is one which is really pushing in the 21st century to be one of the most important policy areas that we currently face. I'm just going to very briefly walk you through the batting order for the evening, just so you know what's going to take place. We're going to officially open the centre with Peter Jennings and Gary Blair from the Commonwealth Bank. Then we'll proceed into the panel discussion at about 5:45. That will last till 7 o'clock. And then at 8 o'clock we'll finish. But in between that, there's an hour whereby you can fill your boots with a drink and a bite to eat on us. Finally, I just want to thank not only all of you in the audience and all of those who have supported the centre, but I especially want to thank the ASPI staff who really have made this possible this evening. They've really done a tremendous job, and especially, of course, my boss, Peter Jennings, the Executive Director of ASPI, who I'll now pass over to officially open the centre.
Well, thanks, Toby, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to see so many familiar faces here, but also some new faces to ASPI as well. I thought that I should say just a few words about the Australian Strategic Policy Institute for those of you who don't know much about the organisation's history. The government took a decision in 1999 to create a think tank which was focused on defence and strategic policy research. And the decision quite deliberately created ASPI to provide an alternate source of advice on defence and security issues. That is alternate to the public service and to the Australian Defence Force. Now, we opened our doors early in 2001 and we've been rigorously pursuing that goal ever since. If I say so myself, I think ASPI has developed a strong reputation for independent and constructive policy analysis. We're the go-to think tank for analysis of the defence budget, for studies on military equipment, and for many aspects of Australian strategic policy, relied on by members of Parliament and the media for balanced comment. Now, the launch of ASPI's International Cyber Policy Centre today really reflects the first major expansion of the think tank into a much wider remit for strategic policy. Cybersecurity is rapidly emerging as one of the most important, significant strategic challenges faced by Australia and other developed economies. When I say that, I'm not particularly threat-mongering, it just reflects the emergence of a new and complex area of policy that has to be thought through and new policy responses developed. Now, we think that we're very well placed to help shape and develop government approaches to cybersecurity, and the creation of the International Cyber Policy Centre today really gives us the capacity to add value in this agenda. I'd like to acknowledge the very strong support in doing this that we have received across the national security community. This includes the backing of ASIO and the Attorney General's Department, the Australian Signals Directorate and the Defence Department, the Federal Police, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Australian Crime Commission. Canberra is actually now a different place than when it was when I started my career. It's much open to partnering with think tanks and other sources of expertise in policy development. And I'm deeply grateful to those agencies and departments for their vision in seeing the value of working with ASPI and using the ASPI approach to develop, to address the cybersecurity challenge. Of course, one of the things that makes cybersecurity so interesting is that it is deeply impacting on the private sector. on the economy, and on individuals. And it's our intent that the International Cyber Policy Centre will be a true public-private partnership. Gary Blair and the Commonwealth Bank are our first partners in the project. And I'm grateful, Gary, to you and your team for the support that you've given us in helping to shape the agenda of the centre. We're in talks with a number of major businesses, and I hope to be able to announce others added to the partnership framework for the International Cyber Policy Centre soon. So don't be surprised if some of you get a phone call from me in the coming days. Now, the centre has 4 key aims, and I did want to just very briefly list those for you. Firstly, lifting the level of Australian and Asia-Pacific public understanding and debate on cyber security. And we're going to do that through writing and commentary on cyber issues in the media and through our own publications stream. Secondly, providing a focus for developing innovative and high-quality public policy on cyber issues. And in that, I should make clear, we're not a technical centre. We're not here to look at the technical complexities of cyber so much as we are about shaping government policy. Third, we want to provide a means to hold what's called Track 1.5, government and non-government, and Track 2, academic and non-government, dialogue on cyber issues in the Asia-Pacific region. There's no doubt that cyber is increasingly becoming a topic of diplomacy, of diplomatic exchange. One of the things that we will be very closely focused on in coming months is the Seoul Cyber Security Summit taking place in South Korea in October, the third of the big international summits, the first in London, the second in Budapest, which is really attempting to develop a shared approach to norm establishment in the use of cyberspace. And fourthly, the centre will aim to link different levels of government, business and the public in a sustained dialogue on cybersecurity. So that's the purposes of the centre. Shortly we'll get into the main part of the evening, which is our, frankly, stellar panel, chaired by Kath McGrath from the ABC. But I would like now to hand over to Gary Blair of the Commonwealth Bank to make a few comments as well. Gary, over to you.
Thank you, Peter. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As both Peter and Toby have said, it's great to see so many familiar faces, and I'm looking forward to all the after-session conversations we're going to have. On behalf of the Commonwealth Bank, I'm pleased to join with Peter and welcome you to this significant event. This is the formal launch of ASPI's International Cyber Policy Centre. Cyber is actually a truly wicked problem. It lacks a universally agreed definition. It's multifactorial in terms of its root causes, including the actors, their means, motives, and opportunities that they exploit. Ownership and accountability for its resolution is recognised as necessarily shared amongst various public and private sector stakeholders, but it's still lacking in terms of clarity as to who does what. There can never be a definitively right or wrong solution to solving cyber, but anything you do to attempt to do so alters the problem state of cyber. So it's something that is under constant evolution. And from that point of view, it's something that we need to have a constant debate on. Essentially, that is what this centre is all about. It also needs to be considered an evidence-based public debate. It doesn't need to be sensational debate. It needs to be informed by people who understand the issue and have a sincerity about the way in which they're going to go about fixing it. Importantly, to put this into practical perspective, cyber policy settings need to actually serve societal stability and economic development and growth in this country, and also across the region and globally. In this context, it's worth noting that the Australian digital economy is growing at twice the rate of the overall economy. So there's something there to protect. And it's also more important, perhaps, in an economy that is actually in transition and needing to diversify in the context of global challenges. In order to preserve and nurture this growth, the digital economy, we need to look at its constituent parts and underpinnings. I came across an OECD study recently. It was published in last month, July. And it actually was a synopsis of their previous work that they'd conducted in Seoul. But it had a very useful model for considering the digital economy. And that model recognizes three key building blocks, being internet access, digital content, and smart applications. Importantly, though, those three key building blocks are dependent upon four elements within a foundation. And they consider that to be cybersecurity, privacy, consumer protection and empowerment, which is something that's actually important to our bank, and openness. All four foundational elements are required to work effectively in unison in order to ensure that society gets full value from its investment in this digital economy. And to put that into some context, a study that was included in a World Economic Forum report, but done by Boston Consulting Group last year, indicated that within the G20 countries, economies, there's essentially a trust dividend on the table of around about $1 trillion. That's only in the online economy. So they're saying that's a conservative estimate. But that trust dividend is what's on the table, what could be eroded if trust and confidence is not there in that digital economy. To put that into context, the upper and lower limits were 1.5 trillion and 2.5. So the $1 trillion actually represents a huge component of the overall prize. We expect that this centre will promote the cyber agenda in ways that recognise those other foundational elements of the digital economy. And in this regard, we support the Centre's four aims, which you've heard Peter talk about. And I'll just briefly enumerate them once again. To lift this level of Australian and Asia-Pacific public understanding and debate on cybersecurity. And seeing that debate as being a constant, ongoing debate that can be recalibrated in light of new information as it comes to hand. To provide a focus for developing innovative and high-quality public policy and cyber issues. So our discussion and interaction between public and private sector is not something that is actually staccato and actually focused around the formation of white papers per se, but a constant ongoing discussion that can actually benefit society as a whole. To provide a means to hold those multi-track dialogue and cyber issues in the Asia-Pacific region, I was fortunate enough to be part of the Australian delegation that went to WICIT in Dubai in December 2012, and other members of that delegation are here today. But it did actually occur, it was actually very apparent, the esteem in which Australia is actually held in those international forums. Australia is seen as an honest broker, and whilst we are aligned, we are actually trusted universally across the globe. We have the opportunity to engage in the way many of our other allies don't, and it's something we actually do need to leverage. To link different levels of government, business and the public in a sustained dialogue on cybersecurity, and making certain that that is practical in a way that it actually does benefit and recognises the relative strengths of different participants, be they large multinationals, large national companies, small and medium-sized business and so forth. No doubt many of you will have seen the Centre's first publication issued earlier this week, the special report on the emerging agenda for cybersecurity. But if you haven't seen it, I'd certainly recommend that you do take the time to read it. In particular, I want to mention and note the 7 recommendations contained in that report, which I think will set the tone for some of the discussion tonight. Firstly, strengthen cyber risk awareness, risk reduction measures and data sharing on threats critical to national infrastructure. Strengthen national cyber policy making capabilities. Build more effective relations with the private sector to harness its skills and capacities and to strengthen resilience. Consolidate community advice on cyber issues. Determine how to strengthen cyber cooperation with the US, and I would add other allies and like-minded countries. Develop a strategy on how to engage China on cyber. Develop a broader regional engagement strategy on cyber. To the above list, we would add one other urgent initiative for the Centre's consideration, and that is to focus dialogue on the building of national cyber capability and capacity, both in terms of our expenditure on R&D, which to date has been something missing from our investment portfolio as a nation, and also the growing shortfall in cyber skills and expertise. And I can't help feeling that that shortage is going to be, is a looming shortage. We're starting to see that now. Placement and recruitment within some of our highly technical teams is taking us 6 months to a year to find the right people. I can only imagine what this might be in 2 or 3 years' time when more organisations are trying to compete with us for those same skills and expertise. And we just aren't producing the right number of graduates out of our universities to support that. So in closing, I want to commend the centre to you and invite you to engage with the centre so that collectively, because this is what it should be, we can enrich the national cyber dialogue that must inform our policy settings both now and into the future. Thank you all.
Well, Gary, thank you very much, and I declare the centre well and truly launched. The HMAS Tobias Feakin. There's no going back now, Toby. God bless all who sail.